This is the Redwood, and it comes from a company called Poseidon, which started years ago with the aim to create high-quality bicycles at lower cost. They started with their first road bike, the Triton, and added hybrids into their lineup later on. After a highly successful campaign with their initial cyclocross adventure bike, the X, it paved a very smooth road for the experimental gravel bike design that you see here, the Redwood. It was also introduced to the world in this same place. Now in this video, I'm going to give you a tour of the $899 Poseidon Redwood, showcasing some of its quirks and features. After that, it'll probably be too dark to really go out and get this thing on the road. And finally, I will not be giving this bicycle a Doug score because my name is not Doug Demoro, it's Eric, and this is also not a car. It's a bicycle. Now, the first feature about this $899 gravel bike is pure and simple, its aesthetics. A bike with this kind of look and this sort of progressive, fun geometry is, as Russ at Pathless Pedaled put it in his review, typically reserved for bikes with a much higher price. It's refreshing to see an attainable bike with this kind of handling and these kinds of looks right out of the box, rivaling that of bikes at a much higher cost. Now, the first quirk worth mentioning for achieving this sort of aesthetic is the construction of the fork. It's pieced together throughout with numerous different hydroformed pieces of aluminum. This helps Poseidon achieve the look of a much more expensive carbon fork while keeping the weight down from using a steel fork and retaining the ability to carry a significant amount of weight on the fork if you're going to put a rack on it. Which of course you can do because there's substantial areas for bolting things on. Now personally, I know that this is not a feature that I'm going to use, and likely I will swap it out for a carbon fork that looks very similarly at some point. Now the second quirk of the $899 Poseidon Redwood gravel bike is the use of a larger seat post diameter than what is normally found on gravel bikes. On the Poseidon Redwood, there is a 31.8 millimeter diameter seat post used, different of course from the traditional 27.2 millimeter seat post diameter. Now this is used in case that a person wants to go ahead and use a dropper style seat post on here, as finding longer travel, larger diameter dropper seat posts is a much easier affair than finding a longer travel 27.2 millimeter seat post. This seat post diameter, of course, comes from the mountain bike world, and it marries itself well with the idea of getting a dropper post onto the $899 Poseidon Redwood. And of course, in preparation, in case an owner wants to put that dropper post on their Poseidon Redwood, they've got the provision for internal cable routing right here on the down tube. Unused on this model, of course, because it doesn't have a dropper seat post on it. Poseidon also takes care of any older dropper post users who may still have external cable routing. Two provisions here for routing your external cable, cinched safely away from any moving parts, for use right here on your actuator on your externally routed dropper post. So even though if you think you may not use some of these quirks or features, they are there and they are ready for anything you might need to throw at. Now, one obvious feature of the $899 Poseidon Redwood is the absolute monstrous tire size that's on here. These come in with a Kenda Cadre 650B by 2.35 width. That's right, 27.5 wheel diameter by 2.35 inch wide tires. Yes, that's right, basically mountain bike tires on your drop bar gravel bike. A feature that normally is seen on far more expensive bikes. A common theme here with the $899 Poseidon Redwood. But that's not all. These, of course, are just the tires that come with the bike. Poseidon says you can fit up to a 2.5 inch tire on here without issue. Now the wheels, of course, front and rear, are 12 millimeter through axle, something that you would expect to see on a decent disc brake equipped gravel bike these days. But interestingly enough, they do come equipped with tubeless ready rims. A little bit of tape and some valves and sealant will have you setting these up, even though the tires are not supposed to work as a tubeless setup, riding tubeless. Of course, if you want to do it right, a different set of tires should be fitted on here before doing so, but anecdotally, it does work. Now, one quirk worth mentioning is the width of the bottom bracket shell. Instead of using a typical 68mm bottom bracket width shell, Poseidon has opted for a 73mm bottom bracket width shell. The reason to do this is to avoid all of the extra work that is typically taken place in the chainstay area to make space for such a large tire. When you look at much more expensive bikes, they typically play around with the drop chainstay, they shorten the chainstays up a little bit more. Poseidon, being a smart company, realizing that most people aren't going to maybe care so much about 10 or 20 millimeters, have opted for a 440mm length chainstay and just stuck a mountain bike bottom bracket width in there, avoiding all need for all of those annoying little tricks that modern gravel bikes with big tires need to do. In my experience, the extra 5mm of width in the bottom bracket shell has felt zero different than any road bike that I've ever ridden. For the simplicity of design and the ease of execution and the fact that we can have an $899 Poseidon Redwood large tire gravel bike, I think it's a good compromise. Now, with the $899 Poseidon Redwood, of course being a gravel adventure bike, it without a doubt comes well equipped with places for cup holding. But provisions for adding a hydration station to this machine are taken to a comical level. 3 bottle cages allowable inside the main frame, 1 on the lower down tube. 4 bolts on your seat stay to, I assume, place more area for drinks. And the same can be said about the 6 total areas for bolting things on the front. Speaking of the seat stays on the $899 Poseidon Redwood, there's an interesting quirk and design feature here at the wishbone. There's this extra piece of aluminum tube welded in, and Poseidon mentions that that is to add to strength and rigidity. But we all know it's a place to store fruit snacks. The last quirk of the $899 Poseidon Redwood, of course, is the message given on the top cap of the steer tube. While most companies may not put anything there at all, or will only don the top of the top cap with their logo, Poseidon would prefer you know to put up or shut up. Possibly some motivation for you at the end of an epic ride that you would have taken on with your new $899 Poseidon Redwood. Well, that about does it for this presentation of the quirks and features of the $899 Poseidon Redwood gravel bike. A bike, of course, that rivals the performance, geometry, and aesthetics of bikes 3 to 4 to 5 times its price. Hence the reason it's almost always sold out. Now, as far as I can tell, before I started shooting this video, I checked Poseidon's website. It seems as though these will be back in stock by the end of this month. Of course, we're shooting in November of 2020 right now, so that information could be outdated at any point. If you're interested in any more content on the Poseidon Redwood, I have more on the channel that you may or may not have to go find yourself, because I am likely too lazy to link to any of it or place any on the end card. And if this is your first time watching a Spindat video, no, they're literally never like this. I literally just wanted to make a spoof on a Doug Tomorrow video. So don't be surprised if you go watch any other ones and they're not at all like this.